Does God force heaven or hell upon us? Commenter on the What Happens After We Die clip said, after we die, God forces us to live in one of two horrible places against our free will. There is no hope for humanity. Now, I can't seem to find that comment any longer, but I screenshot it, thankfully. But there's a lot packed into that statement. I think it begins with a mistaken picture of both heaven and hell. Christianity does not teach that after death God arbitrarily grabs everyone, ignores what they want, and forces them into one of two celestial prisons. And heaven and hell are not simply two equally horrible places with different decorations. The Christian hope is resurrection, restoration, a new heaven and a new earth, creation healed, humanity reconciled to God, death defeated, pain, mourning, decay, injustice, and everything that destroys life finally overcome. That does not sound like a horrible place to me. It sounds like life as it was always meant to be. But perhaps the objection is, what if I don't want it? Would God force heaven on me? I don't think the Bible presents salvation that way. Jesus invites people. Come to me, follow me. Whoever believes, whoever is thirsty, let him come. Ask and it shall be given. An invitation can be accepted and it can be rejected. Love cannot be forced, because the moment love is forced, it is no longer love. But freedom also does not mean freedom from consequences. I'm free to reject medicine, but refusing treatment does not make the illness disappear. I'm free to walk away from every relationship in my life, but I may find myself alone. I'm free to live contrary to truth, but reality will not rearrange itself around my decisions. Choices matter precisely because they lead somewhere. And Christianity says our relationship with God leads somewhere too. God is not merely one more object inside the universe that we can take or leave without consequence. God is the source of life, truth, goodness, beauty, love. So rejecting God is not like rejecting one restaurant because you prefer another. It is rejecting the source from which every good thing ultimately comes. Now, does that mean people consciously say, I choose hell? Usually not. Wes Huff on Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett put it this way. If we don't choose God in this life, God isn't going to force us to be with him in the next. People choose what they believe will make them happy. We all do. But we can desire things that destroy us. We can call slavery freedom. We can call isolation independence. We can call bitterness justice. We can call pride self-respect. We can choose a road without fully understanding where it ends. That is one reason Scripture warns us, not because God enjoys judgment, but because our choices are real. Our actions form us. Our love shapes us. And eventually we become the kind of person our repeated choices have been creating. But there's another question underneath the comment. Will we remain free in heaven? If every choice is good, does that still count as freedom? I think it does, because freedom was never merely the ability to choose destruction. God is perfectly free, and yet God does not sin. As we said in episode 29, freedom is not measured by how many ways we can ruin ourselves. Freedom is the ability to become fully what we were created to be. Right now, our desires conflict. Our wills divide. We want what is good and then want what destroys us. We love and then retreat into selfishness. We want peace and then feed resentment. But in the resurrection, our desires will no longer be at war with our nature. What we want, what is good, and what God created us to be will finally agree. Not because we become machines, but because we have finally become whole. And once again, that is not the death of freedom. It is freedom perfected. Now, hell is harder, and Christians have disagreed about exactly how the biblical images of fire, destruction, exclusion, punishment, and death fit together. But whatever position someone takes, the Bible never presents God as casually delighting in human suffering. God warns, God calls, God pursues, God forgives, God enters history, is crucified, buried, and then God rises from the dead. The cross is not evidence that God has abandoned humanity. It is evidence of how far God is willing to go to save it. So when the comment says there is no hope for humanity, I would say Christianity announces exactly the opposite. Humanity cannot save itself, but humanity has not been abandoned. The Christian story is that God entered the world we broke, accepted the consequences of our rebellion, defeated death from the inside, and opened the way home. But none of that erases judgment. Grace without judgment would mean evil ultimately does not matter. The abuser and the abused, the oppressor and the oppressed, the repentant and the unrepentant, love and cruelty, truth and deception, all of it would finally become morally indistinguishable. That would not be mercy. It would be indifference. Christian hope is better than that. It says evil will end. Justice will be done. Why? Because in order to make all things new, and as they should be, corrections must be made. Sit with that for a moment. Things cannot stay the same to change for the better. Creation will be restored, and mercy is offered before judgment arrives. Does God force anyone to love him? No. Does God force people to become whole against their will? I don't think so. But neither does God promise to make every possible choice lead to the same destination. He does not force people to spend eternity with him in the new heavens and new earth against their will. It's literally the opposite. Freedom means our response matters. And the gospel says that right now the invitation remains open. Not because there is no hope for humanity, but because Christ is humanity's hope.